again, this is great because that way I'll have it and I'll put it as soon as I can on my website. And you guys can access that. Just kind of follow it through. Because really, looking at this, all the graphs and all the models that we've learned, we're trying to put all of them, most of them together. We can't, tie in comparative advantage to this, but we'll tie in everything else in here. That's like 75 to 80% of what you're learning here. So in fact, I should probably leave the big thing up at the beginning of the semester and say, hey, if you understand this, you're pretty much done. Of course, there's a lot of concepts and everything else that you really need to learn and really kind of go more in depth. That's what we're going to do next class, where we just simply, it's up to you then to ask me more questions, because that way I don't, unit 1 outline, unit 2 outline, unit 3 outline, you go over all the material. You just basically ask me, oh, can you talk about opportunity cost, can you talk about this, and I'll talk about that. So that will be next class. Okay, so I've divided this up because what we're going to do is we're going to start with really kind of a heart of macroeconomics in a Keynesian world, and that's aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So we either start with economy, the recession, inflation, or full employment, but there's no point for us to put economy of full employment because then we don't need to have any solutions, the Keynesian solutions. So we have up here we're going to do fiscal policy solutions, down here we're going to do monetary policy solutions, and we're going to compare and contrast. Right? Okay, so let's do the recession. So we're going to draw a recession scenario in both of these places in here. And you leave some room over here because we're going to draw production possibility frontier and Phillips curve right here. Okay, so if we're in recession, price level, real domestic output. We've got aggregate supply curve, aggregate demand curve, and long run aggregate supply. Output at full employment. Don't forget to label all of this. Current output and current price level. Right? And all of these, whenever we do, what's affected when we do the solutions is that what is affected here is 3 variables, 3 major variables that we care about, which is price level, real domestic output, so we're going to be looking at this. Something changes in here, something is going to change in here also. Is it so
Yeah, it's
you can
zoomed
see
in
the
on the
details?
graph right now.
That's great. Then that's what I care about, because I'll try to make my handwriting really good, but it's a struggle. So okay, so we've got the same thing down here, fiscal monetary policy. So we have the starting position of recession. So we're going to draw the same thing here: price level, real domestic output, aggregate supply, aggregate demand, current output, current price level, and the long run aggregate supply. Okay, so all right, so that's the starting point. Now I'm going to do this in different colors. Black is the current situation the economy is in. Blue is going to be solutions, either fiscal policy solutions or monetary policy solutions. Green is going to be the side effects. So when we're looking at the crowding out effect, we talked about crowding out effect, that's going to be green. And then red is going to be net exports. So the net exports, then what happens to the foreign exchange market as a result of all these changes, that's going to be red. So that will be easier to distinguish. Although I don't have enough colors, I wish I had more colors, there's going to be all those changes and other kinds of things that are affected based on long run, short run, and everything else. And I'm going to have to use the same colors for that. But okay, so since we have our original situation, let's draw in here too. We've got price level, real domestic output, unemployment. Okay, so we have production possibilities frontier, product A, product B. So, if this is the production possibilities frontier for this, where's the current level of output? Inside the line, that's right. It's inside the line, it's not on the line, right? Same thing goes here. Same thing. Product A, product B, this is production possibilities frontier, this point inside the line. Doesn't matter where, I'm just kind of giving a little bit more room so we have room to maneuver. And then afterwards, we're also going to worry about Phillips curve. On vertical axis of Phillips curve, we have inflation, here we have unemployment. So really, the Phillips curve is something like this. If we said that this point right here somewhere was natural rate of unemployment, which is linked to the full employment rate of level of unemployment, then let's say our current output is right here because unemployment is higher, and let's say we're assuming in here that inflation is low. It's not a problem, right? So that's the current one, right?
Mr. Volker?
Yeah.
Will the NRU not be on the curve?
Well, it's on the curve. Yeah. It's what I'm with natural rate of unemployment. If we put something on the curve, that means that we're also saying that there's some level of inflation.
So just putting it there allows us to move the curve.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, we don't need to put it. If like I know if we were drawing long run Phillips curve, right? Then we would just draw a straight line because that's the long run Phillips curve. But right now, at this point, it's not needed. We might add that later. Okay. So inflation. And Phillips curve, current point where we are, economy, and this is somewhere right here, natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so that's the starting point. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the solutions, right? So in fiscal policy, federal government is going to conduct what? What kind of fiscal policy is it? Expansionary, right? So it's going to expand, try to expand the economy because we want to boost the output, decrease unemployment. So write that down. Expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, two tools. One is taxes, and two is government purchases or government spending. So what are we going to do with taxes?
Lower them.
Lower them, and government spending?
Increase.
Increase. Okay, good. Now this is going to affect aggregate demand. And we're going to write out the formula for aggregate demand. So aggregate demand equals consumption plus investment plus government purchases plus net exports. I'm not drawing those things yet right now because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put consumption and government purchases in blue because the solution will affect consumption and government purchases. I'm going to put gross private domestic investment in green because the crowding out effect is going to affect gross private domestic investment. And I'm going to put net exports in red because, you know, currency changes and exchange rates changes based on this is going to affect net exports. Right? Same thing goes here. But in here, government spending is not affected. It is affected is consumption and investment, that's original, and then net exports. All right, so that's really kind of a central, from this perspective, this is all Keynesian solutions to economic instability, right? And this is kind of, you can think of this as kind of a sort of central nervous system where we keep coming back to this to see what is happening to the national economy. Well, what is happening to the aggregate demand, aggregate supply in here, and as a result of that, what's happening to price level of domestic output. Okay, so expansionary fiscal policy, taxes down. If taxes are down, this is going to affect first disposable income. Disposable income is the income that people have in their pocket, right, after they pay taxes. So if they pay less taxes, now they're going to have more disposable income. So disposable income goes up. Now, people do two things with their disposable income. What is that?
Save it and spend it.
Save and spend, right? It's a consumption or savings. So if they have more money, they're going to save some, and then they're also going to consume some. So as a result of this, consumption goes up, but it's indirect, it's not direct. It first affects disposable income, some part of saving goes up. Savings is not part of this aggregate demand right here, not in the short run. And we're going to leave this out here dangling because we're going to connect it back because there's always different kind of points of connection. And if we take a different route, then we're going to have a different impact in here, and I'm going to show that to you a little bit later on. So just keep that in mind. What determines how much of the money, additional amount of money consumers consumers are going to spend and they're going to consume? Well, it depends on marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save. Right? So marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save tells us that additional amount of income the government gives them by tax cuts, you know, some part of it is going to be saved, some part of it is going to be consumed. Right? Okay, so that's this. Government purchases, well, that's government spending, that's pretty much government spending. Same thing here, so that goes up. So consumption goes up, government spending goes up, aggregate demand increases. Aggregate demand increases, and it doesn't matter, we just have to shift aggregate demand to the right, but let me make this so that we shift it not all the way to the full employment. Somewhere right here. Not all the way to the full. Okay, so as a result of this, aggregate demand shifts to the right. Well, that causes output to increase, price level to increase. So we write that down here, price level increases, output increases, and as a result of output increasing, unemployment will decrease because companies are producing more goods and services, they need to hire more workers, and if they hire more workers, unemployment goes up. Okay, so that's problem, solution, and that affects aggregate demand, aggregate supply, but then we can come back around here and say, what changes in production?
Nothing, because people aren't getting more employed.
Well, okay, unemployment is down, so what's happening to actual curve? Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, what's happening to the point? Moves, right? The current output increases. We're producing more. We're using more of our resources. We don't have as many idle resources. So this point moves, and because I moved aggregate demand not all the way to the full employment, let's say I move it up to here, right? So that's graphically that's what I'm showing. Same thing. We look at these three variables, right? Price level increasing, output increasing, and unemployment decreasing. Well, price level is the same thing as inflation. Unemployment is this. So we know that unemployment has decreased, therefore we move the point this way, and price level has increased. So we probably move the point somewhere like this. Not all the way to the full employment, but somewhere right here. Okay, so that's that. That's really kind of a fiscal policy solution. Straightforward. Problem, solution, and it goes directly to that, and we see that. Now let's do the same thing down here. Let's do the same thing with monetary policy. What kind of a monetary policy is Federal Reserve going to do? Easy money. Okay, so easy money. Okay, three tools. The fourth one also sometimes used, or not sometimes, but is used. But I mean, really, kind of when we talk about, since we're doing the AP review, it's mostly going to be based on these three tools. First one is open market operations, which is Federal Reserve buying or selling bonds. Right? Second one is discount rate, is the interest rate the Federal Reserve charges its member banks when they want to borrow money. The next one is reserve requirement, which is what the Federal Reserve sets and says, oh, certain amount of percentage of all the bank deposits have to be kept in the vault, right? Okay, so since they're doing easy money, what is Federal Reserve going to do? Are they going to buy more bonds or sell bonds?
Buy bonds.
Buy bonds. Because always think about Federal Reserve is this place. It's like jail for money. Money comes out of Federal Reserve, there's more money in the economy. If money goes in, then that money doesn't exist in the economy, right? So when Federal Reserve is buying bonds, they're bringing in bonds from outside the economy and then putting it in the vault, and what comes out is money, right? So buying bonds is easy money. So buy bonds. What are they going to do with discount rate?
Lower it.
Lower it, because if they lower the discount rate, that means that that's going to incentivize banks to borrow money from them. It's cheap to borrow money from them, and then hope is that they're going to take their money and they're going to lend it out, right? To commercial customers, to consumers, to everybody else. So we're just going to create more lending. And discount rate, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to decrease the discount rate, which basically means the Federal Reserve says, hey, you're a bank, you don't have to hold 10%, you can hold 3%. Actually, reserve ratio is pretty low, but let's say we decrease from 10% to 3%. That means these banks don't have to hold as much money in the vault, and they have more money available to be lending out. And hopefully they lend it out. That doesn't mean that they're going to actually lend it out, but hopefully they'll lend it out. It gives them an incentive. Okay, so that's easy money policy. That's expansionary fiscal policy. Now, unlike here, we don't go directly to aggregate demand. We can't just immediately go to that. As I mentioned to you, all the graphs and all the models that we've learned, it's kind of like jigsaw puzzle, right? We kind of try to connect them. Some of those places do not connect. Some of them, the pieces do not connect. So it's kind of like Legos again. So we need to have other graphs and other models to connect this back to the central part in here, which is aggregate demand. You guys need to? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let me erase this in here. Let me make this smaller. Room divide bond. Okay. All right. So this, what is this going to affect? Which graph are we going to go to? Money market. Excellent. Money market is the market for all the money in the economy. So what ends up happening is that you guys can. It doesn't matter. Just go. Go for it. Yeah. Okay. So what ends up happening is that we go to the money market. On vertical axis of money market, we're going to have nominal interest rates. Nominal interest rate. And down here we have quantity of money, which, calculations, or most of the calculations, is the same thing as M2 measure of money, right? So we got supply of money, we got demand for money. We know that supply of money is vertical, and we got demand for money that is like this. Right? And when we're looking at demand for money, when we learn the money market, there's two parts to demand for money. There's transactional demand, which is this right here. I'm not going to draw that. And then there's asset demand, which is this. So this is the market for money. All of this, Federal Reserve impacts supply of money only. And that increases supply of money. They pump more money into the economy, but not just simply Federal Reserve does that, but when Federal Reserve provides the incentives for the banks to have more money to lend out by banks borrowing money from them, and also, having more money because they don't have to have as much required reserves, banks are going to start lending money out. And as they lend money out, as we learned, that creates money, through money multiplier process, it creates more money in the economy. So supply of money, that's not just simply Federal Reserve increasing, it's also banks' actions that impact supply of money, right? That causes nominal interest rate to decrease. Now again, we have to have another graph to connect this to. So for that, we're going to have investment demand curve. Vertical axis, we have real interest rate. And here we have gross private domestic investment. And this connects to this. So we know from here we can connect back to this. We have investment demand curve somewhere like this. Doesn't matter, we can just draw it like that. ID, investment demand curve. We have a little problem here though. We can't really fit these two kind of Lego pieces together, because this is nominal interest rate, this is real interest rate. But we know the formula for calculating real interest rate for nominal interest rate is following. Real interest rate equals nominal interest rate minus inflation. We know what we just did is that we just decreased nominal interest rate. If we can figure out what is happening to inflation, then we can figure out what's happening to inflation. So there's three possible things that could happen to inflation overall. It could increase, it could decrease, it could stay the same. So when we're looking at decreasing, that's not going to happen, because here we're assuming ceteris paribus, other things are held constant. So basically, with what we have done in here, we don't foresee aggregate demand decreasing or aggregate supply increasing as a result of that, not in the short run, or not in this kind of a Keynesian model. So if that doesn't happen, that means price level doesn't decrease. So the inflation decreasing does not happen. That's not an option. Inflation staying the same. Well, that can happen if nothing is, ceteris paribus, other things still stay the same, right? Price level stays the same, right? So that's one possibility. Another possibility is, as nominal interest rate decreases, this is going to start to affect interest-sensitive consumption. So this is going to affect consumers buying products. Consumers buy products with a debit card, or checks from the checking account, or cash, but that's not much all of their purchases. In fact, big purchases like cars, houses, appliances, and everything else, they're big ticket items. And people don't have that much cash laying around, so they buy it either on credit card or financing, in-store financing, or financing through the dealership or banks when you buy a house. That means that they're going to buy that product, and they're going to pay installments, and they're going to pay interest rate. So if interest rate is lower for financing their refrigerator or car, the final payments, after 3 years where you paid off that car, or 2 years where you paid off the refrigerator, is cheaper. So if interest rate is lower, that's going to incentivize you to buy more interest, big ticket items, so the items that need to be financed, right? Not all consumption goes up, but interest sensitive consumption goes up. If consumption goes up, that means aggregate demand is going to go up. That means aggregate demand is going to shift to right. That means price level is going to go up. So that's another possibility that we could have inflation increase. Now that nominal interest rate decrease, inflation stay the same. Well, if this is this number decreases, but this number stays the same, smaller number minus same number, that means that real interest rate decreases. Nominal interest rate decreases and inflation goes up. Smaller number minus larger number, real interest rate is going to decrease even further. At this point, we really don't care how much it decreases. We just need to know, does it decrease or increase? And we definitely know that real interest rate is going to decrease. That links us to this. So somewhere there was a real estate interest rate, it decreased. And that was corresponding with the investment right here, and investment increased as a result of that. Investment increased, that same thing as this right here, and investment increases. Okay, good. So now we can actually figure out what's happening to aggregate demand. Because of the investment is increasing, because of consumption, some interest-sensitive consumption is increasing, that causes aggregate demand to go up. And we shift aggregate demand just like we shifted in here. So let's say we shift it like this. You guys raise your hand or stop me if I'm going too fast, or if you want me to talk about something specific you can understand any kind of connection, right? Okay, that means price level is going to increase. And output is going to increase. Here, output increases to here. Okay? All right. The same thing happens right here. You got price level increasing, output increasing, and unemployment decreasing. Is that for form?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so, and again, the same thing happens with the graphs in here. We used to have a point right here, and then the point moves towards the production price frontier. And we used to have a point right here, and it moves upwards and to the left and upwards up this way, right? Maybe not all the way to the natural rate line. Okay, so as you can see, the advantage and the disadvantage of fiscal policy is that, well, I guess fiscal policy kind of looks like it directly goes to aggregate demand. It looks like it will be faster. But we talked about before the problems with fiscal policy. The fiscal policy that is conducted by government. By Congress and implemented, and they have to discuss the decisions about taxes down, government spending up. So you have all these lags, right? It takes a while for these for representatives to actually say that, look, we need to decrease taxes. Well, for what segment of society are we going to decrease taxes, right? We're going to increase government spending. Where are we going to increase government spending? Is it in infrastructure? Is it in education? Is it in military? All of these things. It takes a while. So actually, this doesn't happen that quickly. And also, when they do that, they're probably going to do big fiscal policy. It makes no sense to actually push the law or push the bill through the Congress to actually have it like, oh, we're only going to decrease taxes by a little bit. It's not going to have as much impact. We might have to do it again. Well, might as well do a big thing, right? So it works in terms of from the Keynesian perspective here. It works, and we're going to see the side effects of that. But that doesn't happen as fast. This one happens faster because Federal Reserve can get together, Federal Reserve Board can get together. Overnight, they can make a decision. We need to decrease the discount rate, and they announce it, and everything else, and immediately starts to impact the supply of money, immediately starts to impact the interest rates, right? So this may well happen. Another advantage of fiscal monetary policy is that, well, this is good, right? This is all popular. Oh yeah, we're going to increase supply of money. People are going to have more income through because they have lower interest rates, and in here too, taxes are down, people have more income in their pocket. This is all popular, right? But what if we wanted to do contraction of fiscal policy? We started with inflation here. The government would have to increase taxes and decrease government spending. Well, that's not very popular. People are not going to vote for that, not easily, and you can't easily convince people. So it doesn't happen as often because it's very difficult for political establishment to actually, convince its population and its voters to actually implement that. And here, the Federal Reserve doesn't care. Federal Reserve looks at what is good for the economy, and they might do something that is not popular, but what ends up happening is that this is something that needed to happen, and they're appointed there for 14-year staggered terms, so they can't easily be removed. Okay, so that's the advantage and disadvantage of it. Now let's talk about side effects. So let's talk about fiscal policy here. The side effect is going to be in green. This, taxes down, government spending up, is going to affect government budgets, right? So because government has less money coming in and it's spending more money, it's going to have So you got government, budget, deficit. Now there's two things that I can do to plug up the deficit. They can print money, which we're going to leave it out dangling here because we're going to connect it back to money market right here later on. Or federal government is going to borrow money. It's going to issue bonds, savings bonds, treasury bonds, and say, hey, people buy these bonds, these are 5-year bond, 30-year bond, 10-year bond, or anything else, pay some interest rate, and people buy those bonds, and the government has to be paid afterwards, but it collects money from that. Now this is going to affect loanable funds market, not money market, because loan funds market, you can think of loan funds market as like a subset of money market, because it's only market for money that is available to be lent out. So you've got real interest rate right here, price of borrowing money. Down here we have quantity of loanable funds, LF. We've got supply of loanable funds, we've got demand for loanable funds. Right. Okay, who is supplying loanable funds in the market? American public, more specifically households, right? There's 3 different major players that we can divide up the economy in: households, business, and government. So households are the ones who are supplying, they're lending money out. Who is borrowing it?
Government.
Businesses and government. You could also say that some parts of the households will borrow it too, whether they want to borrow it from credit card or whether they want to borrow it for a personal loan and everything else. But largely for the purposes of here, we're going to put down that it's mostly businesses and government, right? So because it's the government that is affecting their borrowing money, that's going to affect demand for money, and that's going to cause demand for loanable funds, not money, but demand for loanable funds, shifts to the right, which causes real interest rate to go up. We're going to link this to investment demand curve. On vertical axis we have real interest rate. Here we have gross private domestic investment, and let's say our investment demand curve looks like this. Okay? In here, these two graphs are linked at the vertical axis. They both have the same variable as vertical axis. So real interest rate. So we can kind of almost draw the point across from here. This used to be the nominal real or the real interest rate at that point before the change. Therefore, this was that. And now, after the change, when demand for loan funds increased, it changed to this. So real interest rate increased. That means investment moved from here to here, and investment decreased. Investment decreased. We come back around here, and investment decreases. Investment decreases, that means aggregate demand comes down. Now, it's based on different agreements, the disagreement between the different schools of thoughts. How much will aggregate demand decrease? Will it crowd out entirely, come back all the way, or will it crowd out a little? Keynesians are going to argue that it's going to crowd out a little bit, yes, but it's not going to be a whole lot. So maybe aggregate demand decreases, and that causes aggregate demand to go down, which causes price level to go down, which causes output to go down. So price level goes down, output goes down, unemployment goes up. Right? But we're still at the higher output level than we were before. So, from a Keynesian perspective, it's still, you have side effect, but it's still worth it. Right? Same way we can come back around here. Since the output decreased, we moved from this point to this point. So we moved a little bit more inward. And from this point, we moved a little bit more inward this way. Right? So that's crowding out. Now, does that happen here with monetary policy? Does crowding out affect that? No, because move and then incentivize the economy to big banks will lend out money, right? So that doesn't happen down here. So that's advantageous for monetary policy from that perspective, right? Now what I'm going to do in here, I'm going to change things around a little bit. It's going to be a little bit messy because now let's think about different schools of thought, right? I mentioned it already. There's crowding out effect. How much is the crowding out? How much does investment decrease? How much does aggregate demand decrease? Well, I guess you can kind of think of it from the perspective, like, from the Keynesian perspective, economists might look at it and say, okay, real interest rate really does affect investment, that's true. But investment demand curve is not very elastic. Right? Elastic meaning very flat or responsive. Changes in price, that means a big response in the quantity of investment demand, or gross private domestic investment. It's largely inelastic. Yeah, it's, changes in, so it's very steep like this, right? Or steeper. So that means that used to be, the investment used to be here, now the investment decreases by a little bit, right? So it's not a big impact. Right? And why is it more steep like this? Because there's a number of other things that affect investment, right? Business confidence, capital stock at hand, and all these kinds of things, which definitely shift the investment demand curve. But that perspective is that changes in interest rate does not affect investment as much, quantity of investment. From a classical perspective, they say that if you don't have a lot of government involvement, if you have a situation where true amount of loanable funds that is lent out reflects amount of money that people are willing to lend out, and the demand for loanable funds is kind of reflects what market sets, then real interest rate is a big determinant of how much investment is going to be, right? It's the premium from present value of money to the future, meaning that I will not consume right now, I will lend you money and you consume it, and then I will consume it later when you repay. So, without going into much detail, what that means is that from their perspective, investment demand curve might be more flat like this, right? So that means the investment used to be right here, now it's right here, so it decreases by a whole lot. So there's more crowding out. So different schools of thoughts, different kind of perspectives, and different kind of impacts, right? You really don't need to know too much about it. I just kind of wanted to show it to you because, kind of keep in mind the perspective of different schools of thought. All of this, what we're doing, is pretty much Keynesian, or otherwise is what this course entails and the AP test entails is the mainstream economic school of thought. Yeah.
So they wouldn't ask questions like based on the school of thought you have to do it.
You will have, no, I don't think you will have, based on school of thought, you will have some changes in here. I think you'll have some issues like what are the basic assumptions of Keynesian model and classical model, and there'll be some multiple choice questions based on that. Right? Okay, so we've got these. Now, we're going to deal with foreign exchange market. Now, this is a little bit tricky. I wish I actually had, good, we have time. I wish I actually had, one of those like whiteboards that kind of slide up and down, because what happens from here is that I actually would want to split from here in 3 different ways and have 3 different scenarios, because that's what ends up happening. So it'd be much neat when I draw that. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to draw all of it on one graph. So it's going to be a little bit messy. But if you follow the process, as long as you understand the process, that's all matters, right? So, foreign exchange market, we've got on vertical axis, let's say it's dollar for euro. So this is quantity of dollars on international market for exchange purposes, not just quantity of dollars internally completely. And this is, let's say we're comparing it to euro, dollar to euro, right? So price of dollar is going to be expressed in terms of euro, and since we're graphing the market for dollars, that means dollar is going to be a denominator, right? Okay, we've got supply of dollars on the international market and demand for dollars on the international market. Who is supplying dollars on the international market? U.S. American consumers, right? American households, when, not all American households, but when American households buy imported products, they're sending dollars outside the United States. Or they want to invest money in a foreign country, they want to buy bonds or assets in the country, they're sending money out. Who is demanding dollars on the international market?
People who want to buy American goods.
Foreigners who want to buy American goods and services, or who want to invest money in the United States, who want to buy the bonds that the government is issuing in here, or corporate bonds, or businesses, or anything else, and real estate or anything else. So it's very important to kind of remember who is doing that, right? It's the Americans who are when they supply dollars, and the foreigners who are demanding dollars. Okay, now. If we remember, there's 5 determinants for foreign exchange market. One is taste and preferences. Second one is, or tastes, American taste or foreign taste change. Second one is changes in income, right? National income in the United States or foreign countries. So the third one is purchasing, based on purchasing power parity, or basically, relative price changes. And fourth one is relative interest rate changes. And then fifth one is speculation. So we can eliminate some of these because we can say, we really haven't changed anything in here in terms of some of those determinants. When we talk about tastes, there's nothing we can tell. Like, as a result of what we have done, we can't really tell if American tastes have changed. And Americans prefer imported products in terms of quality or anything else. So that's not affecting supply or demand for dollars on the international market. Speculation too, we can kind of ignore speculation right now because speculation could be, I'm not sure if the speculation will be based on this as much, although if government goes into so much deficit, then the speculators might speculate, oh well, something's going to happen, exchange rates and everything else. But that's there's a lot of things that happen in there and might not be as relevant in here. The three really kind of determinants that impact that are changes in income, which definitely changed as a result of the fiscal policy. Relative changes in price, which definitely changed, and relative changes in interest rate. Interest rate is right here. Real interest rate in this scenario increased, real interest rate in this scenario decreased. Okay, so price level too. Price level in this scenario increased, and price level in this scenario increased. And income, you can actually write out income in here too. What's going to happen to national income? It increases because partly unemployment decreases. That means some people didn't have jobs, now they do have jobs. They didn't have income, now they do have income. Overall national income increases, so income will increase. Let's do this in blue, consistent. Same thing. So what I'm going to attempt to do, I'm going to show the impact of real interest rates first. And then I'm going to show the impact of price level or income rate, right? So real interest rate. As real interest rate increases in the United States, this is going to start to affect this model. Now, you could argue that it affects both demand and supply. I'm only going to show demand because otherwise you're going to have so many graphs in here, shifts in here, it's going to be confusing. Demand is foreigners when they want to do something, right? So now, let's say you have foreign investor, foreign household member who has extra cash, extra money, and then wants to invest money, put money in a bond. And I can say, look, I can buy a European bond and it gives me 4% return, or I can buy an American bond and it gives me 7% return, right? So, because real interest rate is increasing. For foreign investor, they definitely want to do that more because they get higher return from real estate. Even if American bonds relatively are not higher than what European bonds or Japanese bonds will pay, either corporate or government, because American bonds, both government bonds and corporate bonds, might be more stable because U.S. economy is doing well and the U.S. government is more, has never defaulted on the payments and everything else is more stable, they might still prefer. So it might be that, the return on investment or yield on European bonds is 4%, American bonds was 2%, and increased from 2% to 3%. Still, what's going to happen is that foreigners are going to relatively change, like they're going to invest more in the United States, right? So what happens is that demand for dollars on the international market is going to increase because in order for them to buy American bonds, they have to get dollars and buy those bonds with dollars. So demand for dollars increases. You could also argue that Americans might choose to buy more American bonds and less foreign bonds because the relative interest rate changes, and that might shift the supply of dollars on the international market to the left. One way or another, if we do both or one, what ends up happening is that we have a dollar that appreciates. Here, can you hear me? It's not here. We've got this, right? Dollar appreciates. It's always useful to actually write this out rather than just think in your head. Write out the ratio. So let's say dollar for euro let's assume that it used to be 1-to-1 for simplicity's sake. $1 for 1 euro. If dollar appreciates, what's the new exchange rate or ratio?
2.
Is it $2 for 1 euro?
No, it's 1 second.
No, it's the other way. $1 for 2 euro. $2 for 1 euro. That's the, that's what a lot of times we say. Oh yeah, we want to do that. It kind of seems like it's right because dollar increased from 1 to 2, dollar appreciated. But no, think about what the ratio entails. $2 for 1 euro means that you have to take more dollars to get 1 euro. And that's dollar depreciating, not appreciating. So this is dollar appreciating. With $1, you get more euros, right? Okay, so as a result of this, dollar appreciates. That's why it's important to have this kind of ratio in here, because before it used to be $1 and 1 euro and $1. 1 euro, $1. Therefore, euro divided by dollar, it was 1 divided by 1, it's 1. Now it's euro divided by dollar, therefore it's 2 divided by 1, so it's 2. So dollar appreciates. Okay, if dollar appreciates, how is this going to affect American exports and American imports?
Imports will increase, exports.
Imports will increase, exports will decrease. Because think about it, Americans are the ones who are importing products. And now with $1, they get before they got 1 euro, now with $1 they get 2 euros. So they can buy more European products. If the prices in Europe hasn't changed, still Americans are able to buy more European products because they get more euros from $1. So American imports are going to increase. But American exports are going to decrease because when Europeans want to buy American products, what ends up happening is that, oh wait, now I have to take 2 euros to buy $1. So it's more expensive, so they don't as much. Therefore, this is the same thing as net exports. Smaller amount minus larger amount, that means net exports decreases. Net exports decreases, well that's the same thing as this right here. Net exports decrease. And that brings aggregate demand down even more. So let's bring aggregate demand down, not all the way back, but to this. Okay? That causes price level to decrease even further. And that causes output to decrease even further. It means price level decreases, output decreases, unemployment increases, and we can kind of see what's happening to inflation at the same time, in the income at the same time. And we can kind of look at it in here, production cost per material, the point moves more inward, and on a Phillips curve, the point moves more inward. That's what happens. Yeah.
Is there a name for this, like the crowding out effect for?
This is a net export effect.
Okay.
Yeah, net export. Okay, now, that was only one connection, right? We could follow different connection. And it's not like AP is going to ask you, oh, what's going to happen to exchange rates as a result of all of this happening. They're going to direct you, they're going to give you this kind of leading questions. They're going to say, well, if government implements expansionary fiscal policy, what's going to happen to national income abroad? Well, they probably won't jump to that. They might just jump to like, what's going to happen to unemployment? Unemployment is going to go down. What's happening to output? Output is going to go up. As a result of these, what's going to happen to national income? Well, national income is going to go up. If national income increases, how is this change in national income is going to affect net exports? Or, before net exports, exchange rate for dollars, right? So it's almost like we're going to follow a different route. So let's follow this route, income. If Americans' income has increased, which curve is going to shift? Who is supplying dollars on the international market?
Americans.
Americans. Who is demanding dollars on the international market?
Foreigners.
Foreigners. So it's going to be supply of dollars going to increase because it's American incomes that change, not European incomes. So that means that supply of dollars on the international market will actually increase because Americans have more money. They buy more American products and they also buy more imported products. It's not like you guys actually go out there and seek out American-only products. Sometimes you might, but very, very rare. When you buy clothes or anything else, you go in there and say, oh, wait a minute. This product is cheaper and I like it, and then you buy it. And you end up buying more imported products because you have more money and then you guys spend more money. And then also because the exchange rate has decreased. That's different. I'm sorry about that. That's different. It's because the dollar has depreciated and that causes more Americans to buy product. Or dollar has appreciated, imports go up. But as far as income is concerned, you have more income, you go on to buy more products. You buy more imported products and then buy more domestic products also. So that means that dollar is going to depreciate instead of appreciate. So which one is it? Well, it's both, or it's neither, or it's only one or another. In reality, we can kind of look at it and say, Oh, as a result of expansion of fiscal policy, the government really didn't have to borrow as much money. It had surplus before and it's using surplus. That means this doesn't happen as much. That means real interest rate doesn't increase as much. That means this impact is not going to be as prevalent or doesn't happen. But as a result of expansion of fiscal policy, if the incomes definitely increase, then so in that case, dollar is going to depreciate. So multiple things could be happening. Same thing happens with price level. If price level in the United States increases, what's going to happen to U.S. exchange rate? Well, think of it this way. If American price level increases, that means American products are relatively more expensive than imported products. Which products are you mostly buying? Imported, right? More likely we're going to buy more imported products, right? Because imported products are cheap. So that means Americans are increasing supply of money on the international market, increasing the dollars on the international market. Same thing here. At the same time, would Europeans be buying more American products or less American? Less, because American products are more expensive. So at the same time, demand for dollars is going to decrease. So in that, from here, it goes from like almost here to here. So dollar definitely depreciates, right? So because we have three different impacts in here, one is real interest rate. Interest rate changes. This causes dollar to appreciate. Income changes, U.S. income. So real interest rate in here was increase, U.S. income increase. Dollar is going to depreciate. Or U.S. price level increased, and that's going to cause dollar to depreciate. Multiple impacts in here, right? And you're going to take multiple routes. And if the dollar appreciates, then net export's going to go down. If dollar depreciates, net export's going to go up. Then you should kind of link to that. Now, down here, I'm going to do this very quickly because it's the opposite of that. Because what has happened is that opposite in terms of real interest rate. You've got dollar for euro exchange rate, or euro divided by dollar. You've got quantity of dollars. You've got supply of dollars. Demand for dollars. This was the exchange rate before. Let's say it was $1 for 1 euro. Simplicity's sake. And then now, as a result of exchange rate, the real interest rate in the United States decreasing, foreigners don't want to invest as much money in the United States. Therefore, they're demanding less dollars. So demand for dollars decreases, and that causes dollar to depreciate. It used to be before 1 divided by 1. Now it's 1 euro divided by 2. So it used to be 1. Now it's 0.5. So now if dollar depreciates, that means that you have to spend $2 to get 1 euro. And that's dollar depreciate. And because dollar depreciates, that causes American exports to go up and American imports to go down. Well, why? If dollar depreciates, if somebody in Europe wanted to buy an American car and the American car cost $20,000, they had to take 20,000 euro, exchange it for $20,000 and buy that one car. The price of the car in the United States is the same, $20,000, but the exchange rate has changed. So now when a European person takes 20,000 euros, gets $40,000. So it has to only take 10,000 euros to get $20,000 to buy that car. So the price of that car for a European is twice as cheap, or like half as much as it was before. So that means American exports are going to go up. But the same way, American imports are going to go down because when Americans want to buy European products, they have to take twice as much dollars to get the same amount of euro and then buy that product. Right? That causes net exports to increase. Net exports increases. And that causes aggregate demand to increase. Aggregate demand increases and aggregate demand shifts to the right. That causes price level to increase, output to increase. And unemployment to decrease. Which causes this point to move, we have drawn in here on the line, which causes this point to move over here. So, Net export effect has a different impact with when we have monetary policy. If we connect it through real interest rates. What if we connect it through price level and income? Well, it's the same as what we've done up there. Because in this scenario with monetary policy, well, real interest rate, decreased in here. That caused dollar to depreciate. Or US incomes increased because as a result of easy money policy, which causes dollar to depreciate. And US price level increases because of the easy money policy, price level increases. That causes dollar to depreciate. So in here, it's kind of consistent when we're looking and saying, oh, wait a minute, you know, in here the impact is the dollar is going to depreciate. And if all of the impacts are happening, dollar is going to depreciate even more, right? Because, I kind of showed you what happens with income and dollar depreciation because of the supply of dollars in the international market increases. Well, that's the same thing as in here, supply of dollars in the international market increases. Or price level, US price level increases, that means supply of dollars in the international market increases and demand for dollars in the international market decreases, right? And the same thing, supply of dollars, dollar depreciates, right? Okay, so that's the connecting points. Now you want to be careful here. Again, read the questions on AP very carefully and say, oh wait, what are they asking me? Are they asking me if the real interest rate changes, what happens to exchange rates? Or are they asking me if the price level changes, what happens to real interest rates? Well, what happens to exchange rates, right? So you want to follow different routes. Okay, now it gets a little bit more interesting also because we got to tie up some loose ends that are left out there, right? One of the loose ends that are left out there is the savings. When we had expansionary fiscal policy, taxes down, government spending up. Well, taxes went down, disposable income went up, consumption went up. Then we kind of linked this to budget deficit and everything else in here. But we left the savings out there hanging, right? So if the savings, American household savings go up, how is that going to affect loanable funds money? First, let's remember, who is supplying loanable funds on the international market? Who is lending money on the international, or not international market, but in the US market? Households. Households are the ones. It could be both American households or foreign households too. They're the ones who are lending money too. But still, majority of it is American households, right? American households are lending money. By lending money is the same thing, another term for it is saving. When I'm saving, I'm an American household member, and I want to earn interest on that money and not spend it right now, I buy a bond, corporate bond. And then the corporation is going to repay it to me after, I don't know, 6 months or 2 years or 10 years or anything else. And then plus it's going to pay me interest rate. So that's saving. Act of saving is the same thing as lending money out, right? So because of this, we can kind of link this to here. And that causes supply of loanable funds to shift to the right, which would cause real interest rate to decrease, which in here, instead of real interest rate increasing, we have real interest rate decreasing, we have totally different kind of impact, right? So if we follow this route and say, hey, if savings affect the supply of loanable funds, then what happens? Well, real interest rate is going to increase. If government borrows money, what's going to happen? Well, demand for loanable funds increases, in that case, real interest rate. So again, I wish I had a different kind of way where I could split it and I can show you different impact and then everything else that falls off. Right? But that's a connecting point. Sometimes that question is going to come up. Again, on AP, you're going to look at it and say, what is the question asking me? If the question is leading you as a taxes decrease, what's going to happen to U.S. budget deficit? And then what's going to happen to government borrowing? Well, then you're following this route. If taxes decrease, what's going to happen to disposable income? As a result of changes in disposable income, what's going to happen to savings? As a result of changes in savings, what's going to happen to real interest rate? And then you're going to follow this route. Another thing in here that we left out dangling, or unconnected, was this. What if government prints money instead of borrowing? Right? If government prints money, which model does that link to?
Supply of money.
Supply of money, which is part of what? money market, right? So in here, I mean, again, I wish I had more room to draw the money market up there, but I'm gonna link it down here. I'm gonna say, hey, this is going to affect supply of money, and supply of money is going to increase, which causes nominal interest rate to decrease, and if we follow this through in here, this causes real interest rate to decrease. Real interest rate decreases, investment increases, and we have different impact. So it's different kind of routes, different kind of impact. All you're trying to do is you're trying to show that chain of reaction, right? And you're always answering, what is the next connection? What is the next connection? What is the next connection? It's that, you know, that example that I talked about at the beginning. It's like a giant Rube Goldberg machine. It's this complicated thing. One thing affects another, another affects another, another affects another. I can't just simply jump from here to here. I have to explain to you how does all of this connect. I have to show you everything. You have a question?
Oh,
Right.
sorry.
Okay, so we're close to finishing up. We still have a couple of other things to add to here. And then all of this that I've talked about is just basically short run. I haven't talked about long run yet. So then there's going to be a bunch of changes in here too. First, let's count all the graphs that we learned. Right? And all the graphs that are up here. Aggregate demand, aggregate supply. There's a bunch of supply and demand graphs in here, so we kind of studied individual supply and demand. So we have market supply and demand for longer funds, market supply and demand for money market, so that's supply and demand. Production cost base frontier, Phillips curve, loanable funds market, money market, investment demand curve, foreign exchange market. With either we have left, we haven't drawn it here, is Laffer curve, and that's what I'm going to add. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the graphs that we learned. There's comparative advantage model, where the countries are exporting and importing, and you know, which one has a comparative advantage. We can link this to this model in here, to this kind of a larger engine in here. We have to do that separately. Okay, so let's talk about Laffer curve. So Laffer curve deals with tax percentage and tax rate, tax percentage or tax rate and tax collection. So in vertical axis we have tax percentage. And down here we have tax collection. And as we've drawn before and understood before, this goes from 0 to 100%. And 100%, the tax collection is going to be close to 0 because people are not going to work if the government is going to take the entire amount of money from them, or entrepreneurs, so they get all the profit they have to pay for the government. So you'll have some economic output, but not as much. But you had Soviet Union, you know, although it was a different kind of system, but it was taxation was almost like there was no private businesses. So for this model, we have, let's say we have a graph like this. What that means is that there's some optimal tax percentage we can charge that will collect the maximum amount of money from the economy. And that's because if we charge too high of a taxes, that discourages economic activity, that discourages entrepreneurship, or individuals become more, individuals to produce more, to work more, because of higher taxation. That means that there's less amount of money to be taxed overall. There's less income to be taxed. So this links to kind of a supply side ideas. Right? Supply siders in here, when they look at this fiscal policy, they look at it and say, look, if you're going to do this, don't increase government spending, just cut taxes. Because when you cut taxes, what's going to happen is that both aggregate demand is going to increase, yes, but also aggregate supply is going to increase because of those three assumptions that they have. Which is there's lower taxes, higher disposable income, more savings, translates into more investment, right? Because the supply of loanable funds increases, interest rate decrease, more investment, that means more tools, machinery, equipment, productivity increases, and aggregate supply curve shifts to the right. Or taxes are down, people have more income, they're more productive because they're happier, they have more higher amount of income. That's their assumption. And another one is risk-taking. Lower taxes encourages individuals to become, it gives more encouragement for individuals to become entrepreneurs. If you've got an entrepreneur and you become start your own business, you have to pay, and you have to pay a really high amount of taxes. You work really hard to start that. It might be discouraging, saying, look, you know, I have to pay 40% taxes. That means that it's too high, and all the work that I put into starting a business and everything else, it might not be worth it.
It's not that it happens, it's not extreme points like that, but there's a certain incentive or disincentive that happens in here, right? So if there's more economic activity, more entrepreneurship, that means aggregate supply curve shifts. So supply siders say, don't do this, and when you don't do this, what happens is that both aggregate demand shifts and aggregate supply shifts, which is better than just simply aggregate demand shifting, but then you still have a problem of like, well, if government decreases taxes and maintains the same government spending, it still has a deficit. It has to borrow money, and it goes to crowding out effect where you have interest rates increase. But then comes Laffer and says, actually no, if we are assuming that we're charging prohibitive taxes, or taxes that are really high, 40%, and we decrease that to 30%, and let's say that this happens, that means that tax collection is going to increase. If tax collection increases, that means government budget deficit does not happen. Right? And government doesn't have to borrow money. Right? So that supports the supply side ideas. Yeah.
Oh, so tax collection means like how many people?
How much money government actually receives?
Oh, okay.
So this is percentage that it charges. What is the total amount of money that it receives?
Okay.
And in here, the whole idea is that whole idea of Laffer curve is that if this is the economy and government is taking 40% of the economy, I should have 40%, something like that. 40% of the economy, that's the tax collection.
Mm-hmm.
But when they cut taxes, and if it gives incentive for consumers, for workers to work more, productivity to increase, and more entrepreneurship, that means the size of pie, which is GDP, which is also national income, increases.
Yeah.
And now government is not collecting 40%, it's collecting 30%, but 30% is larger than 40%. Right? That's why there's more tax collection. But then the criticism of Laffer curve is that are we really here? Maybe we're right here. We don't know where that optimum tax point is. And taxes is not the only thing that affects economic growth in the country. There's many different other things. So there's a lot of criticism of that too. Right? Again, we've seen empirical data, and we've seen some kind of cases where that has worked in some countries, like a lot of Eastern European countries. But with what I know, most of the economists here in the United States believe that if you cut taxes, you're actually going to collect less money. Because there's already plenty of incentives in the United States to become an entrepreneur, to start that, because you have this kind of system that encourages entrepreneurship, and you have a lot of investment in foreign countries and domestically. Okay, so all of this that we have done is short run. What if the question AP asks, oh, as a result of changes to fiscal policy, what's going to happen to long run? Well, we have to look at what is long run. Long run is this. Long run aggregate supply curve, and long run is production possibilities frontier. That's long run, right? Production possibilities frontier is the same thing as long run aggregate supply curve. So anything that affects production possibilities frontier, not the point moving in and out, will affect long run aggregate supply curve, and that's a long run impact. So let's write out the determinants for production possibilities frontier. One is change in quantity of cells. Two is change in quality of capital, because quality of entrepreneurship, land, and labor depends on quality of capital, and skills, knowledge, and abilities, and technology. Right? And three is technological advancement. We can kind of ignore these last two because we really kind of, based on what we have done in here, we really can't kind of figure out what's happening. Is there more technological advancement, less technological advancement? Is there more higher quality of capital or lower quality of capital? We really can't tell. But let's focus on quantity of cells. Cells is capital, entrepreneurship, land, and labor. As a result of the changes in here with fiscal policy, what has happened to land? Is there more land or less land?
Less. Right?
Why?
Because the businesses are expanding.
Businesses are expanding. I mean, if you have a certain amount of land, you really can't really tell if there's more land or less land. I mean, land is kind of finite in the sense that it's utilized mostly, unless you encroach into other kinds of places that are publicly owned and parks and other kinds of things. Right? So really, we really can't tell what's happened to that amount of land. Labor, is there more labor or less labor?
More.
Why?
Because unemployment is decreased.
But you want to be careful. Unemployment and labor is different thing. If this is the labor market, Good, no, it's good. I
We
like
talk some here.
take risk. And if this is amount of employed people and this is unemployed, if unemployed decreased, that means the amount of employed people has increased and unemployed decreased, but the total amount of labor force hasn't changed. Unless we have immigration, unless we have higher birth rates and everything else down the line that has an impact, right? So the labor market hasn't changed as a result of that. So because of that,
Please pardon this interruption. A little announcement for forums for freshmen and sophomores who are taking AP tests. Report to your forum classes and pick up your packets before heading to the theater. Once you've checked in with your forum, you're welcome to go to the theater. For any juniors and seniors who didn't do AP prep last week, go directly to the theater. Once again, freshmen and sophomores, go to your forum classes and check in, and then once you've done so, go to the theater. Juniors and seniors who didn't do AP prep last week, go directly to the theater during forum. Thank you.
okay, we're gonna finish up in a couple of minutes, so don't worry about it. This is not affected, labor is not affected, land is not affected. Entrepreneurship, you really can't tell unless you're looking at the supply side ideas or anything else that changes in taxes will affect more entrepreneurship or anything else. Well, let's, from the Keynesian perspective, let's say that it doesn't affect, we don't know that. But one thing we definitely know is that because of expansion fiscal policy and because of this crowding out effect, what has happened to investment? What? It went down. If investment went down, how does that affect capital, amount of capital at hand, machinery, tools, and equipment? Is that more or less?
Less.
Less, because investment is the same thing as businesses investing in themselves. They're buying new machinery, tools, and equipment, and then doing less of that because cost of borrowing money is higher. So that means that capital, quantity of capital decreases. If quantity of capital decreases, what happens to production cost base frontier? It shrinks.
Ooh.
And that's the same thing as the long run average supply curve, and it shifts to the left. Down here, we have the opposite situation. We have increase in investment, which means that capital quantity of capital increases. Amount of capital increases, which just means that production cost base frontier increases, and the long run average supply curve. And the connecting point here is that because there's more investment, there's more machinery, tools, and equipment, because businesses invest in themselves, they replenish the things that they have destroyed and have used up, and then they have more of it, and have more capital goods at hand. More capital goods at hand, productivity increases, production cost base frontier increases. So that's the long run. So don't get confused. If they ask you about the long run, they're focusing on these two major things in here. Long run aggregate supply curve and production cost base frontier, which are the same thing. They're both same thing. Okay, I think that's it. There's always some other things to add here. You don't have much time, and that's pretty much majority. So again, if you don't have, if you had a problem and you didn't fill it out, and if you want to refresh and everything else,